I'm Garrett. This is Annika and Isaiah, and we're presenting about classism in education.
So here's some definitions before we start. There's classism, which is a manifestation of social class, privilege, and power. Social class, which is a combination of economic, social, and cultural capital in the terms of money, network and resources, and familiarity of culture. And then power, which is an entity or individual's ability to control or direct others. Privilege, the theory of special advantage or entitlement used to one's own benefit or to the detriment of others. And then Lott's definition, which we will go more into depth with on the next slide, which is three forms of classism: citational, institutionalized, and interpersonal.
And then the Nordic model, which we'll be going a lot more in depth about later, which is a comprehensive welfare state with an emphasis on transfers to households and publicly provided social services financed by taxes.
So within classism in education, we identified a couple of problems. One of them was that universities continue to gain profit from bending the rules that allow people to buy their way into college instead of getting into college by like the natural way of getting good grades and getting accepted. And then in a couple of studies, they found that a target of classism was people of lower SES or socioeconomic status, and those people felt discouraged and their education was undervalued. And also, there was a group of 50 to 60-year-olds that were interviewed, and they found that the people that were interviewed were also part of the working class, and they had their education, and they felt that their education and identities were inauthentic and undervalued. And then back to the three types of classism, they derived three forms of classism from Lott's definition. Citation being stereotyping people of lower backgrounds having lower intelligence. Interpersonal, which is having behaviors that devalue those of low social class. That could be just bullying. And institutionalized, which is a structure and an organization that excludes those from lower social class. That could be something in like a college that is a paywall to an activity and people of low socioeconomic status can't afford to get into it. A little bit of history is that in America, we can see the upper, middle, working, and lower class, and we usually associate the high skilled jobs like being a lawyer or a doctor with the upper class, and they tend to have more wealth. And then classism takes place when people of higher class use their power and affluence to actually make their life easier. And then a modern example, in America, we can see social class is the amount of wealth that a certain percentile of households have obtained. And so in Q3 of 2006, the top 10% of households, the top 10% of households being people that have built businesses, own homes, and give large gifts to private colleges, had obtained $44.98 trillion worth of assets. And the other 90%, being the middle, working, and lower class, had 31.39 trillion. And then we can see that that gap in wealth grew tremendously in Q2 of 2019, where the top 10% held 78.1 trillion. You can see there's a huge increase. And then the other 90% had only 44.4 trillion, which is not as big of an increase, but there was still an increase. But we can see the disparity between the 10% and the 90% still having giant gaps in between their growth.
So here are two contrasting examples of classism in education. So one is Lori Loughlin and the college admittance scandal. So in 2019, William Rick Singer admitted to accepting money from wealthy parents to inflate their children's scores and bribe college officials. The most high-profile person in the case was actress Lori Loughlin. She was revealed after Singer cooperated with the FBI, and she's now behind bars. So her and her husband paid Singer to get both of her daughters into high colleges when they did not have the scores for them. Other people that were caught up in this scandal were revealed to have sent other people in to take the SATs for their children and to fake being on sports teams for their children. And all of this reinforced institutionalized classism because it gave these opportunities and this higher education to people that, if they had gone the right way, maybe wouldn't have gotten it and maybe wouldn't have deserved it.
And then contrasting, we can see mitigated examples of classism where President Joe Biden said, we're going to work quickly with Congress to dramatically ramp up healthcare protections. get Americans universal college and lower healthcare costs as soon as humanly possible. This is the fight to make healthcare in America more affordable, and it takes steps in the right direction to lessen classism and by making it more accessible to those of lower SES. And then we can also see Senator Elizabeth Warren saying, how do Fortune 500 companies pay zero in taxes while college loans go up 6%? This game is rigged. And by making upper education more affordable, that will allow the middle class and lower class Americans to have greater social mobility, allowing them to move up to a higher social class.
So some possible solutions and mitigations. One side of it would be education and awareness. So becoming aware of the hidden classism ingrained in our education system. This would be stuff like club fees and extracurricular activities, things that on the surface you wouldn't think would be related to classism, but all of the money that goes into these clubs and extracurriculars, all of the equipment maybe bought for a sport, and the time it takes to transport children from this goes into classism, because those that need to work harder, that are trying to increase their social standing and support their families, won't have enough time to help their kids maybe boost up their college applications by doing all these activities. So another part of this would be the stigma around things like free lunch. Free lunch is a huge program in the United States, but there's still a lot of stigma for people that receive this program, and working to educate the masses and bring down the stigma would help mitigate classism. So to address the three parts of Lott's definition of classism, one part would be reform to eliminate institutionalized classism, lowering barriers for low-income students, and having more accessible resources. So those scholarships are out there and those resources are out there, but making them more accessible to people and making them more well-known will help people from a lower tax bracket or a lower social standing rise up and get that higher education and move on to those higher paying jobs. And then changing behaviors that reinforce interpersonal classism. So those feelings of guilt and insecurity that can come from your peers judging you for things that they in their mind aren't doing anything with classism, but bullying people about where they get their clothes and what kind of car their parents drive. All of this reinforces interpersonal classism. So working to reduce those behaviors at a young age will help fight against classism in education. And then rewiring our brains to get rid of citation classism. So there's always going to be work to do with that, but it can start with our generation thinking back and self-reflecting and being like, not everyone comes from the same situation as I do, and I shouldn't judge people for things that I know nothing about. So starting that with us would help us in the future, in our future generations, reduce classism, reduce the wealth gap, and reduce the stigma around being a lower income person. And then I included a quote at the end from George Orwell: until they become conscious, they will never rebel. And until they have rebelled, they cannot become conscious. That is from 1984. I think it's it's a good quote, and I think it's applicable to what we're learning about here today. And becoming conscious of these issues is how we can rebel against them and make our new way of thinking.
Another solution is to completely change our nation's economic system. Currently in the United States, we have a free market capitalist economy, which means that our nation relies heavily on private commodities and services, including private education, which is seen as far superior to the public education provided. A more equitable system is the Nordic model, and this model provides citizens with a large social safety net and high welfare benefits. The less resources a family or individual has, the more they're provided. These services are provided by having significantly higher tax on the wealthy. In Sweden, the high tax is currently 57%, while in the United States, it's only 33%. And in terms of education, the Nordic model provides all students with a high quality public education financed by taxes. And they still have private schools, but they're not really as desired because they're not any higher quality than the public education provided. And this model gives everyone a better chance of going on to get a high paying job. And if you want an education, you're able to get it. Whereas in the United States, many students aren't able to go on to get a college degree because it's so unaffordable and unattainable. And as a result of everyone being given a high quality education, the Nordic countries tend to have some of the lowest income inequality as well as some of the highest social mobility. And this helps to end the perpetual cycle of the rich staying in their bubble and getting richer, will the poor get more poor?
And that is our presentation. This is our bibliography. Thank you so much.